Ladies and gentlemen, it's so good to have you here on the panel with me today. As Minister mentioned, Singapore has over the years grown to become an international financial center in Asia. So I want to start with you first, Kiju. Why do you think it's so important for someone working in Singapore's financial center to have a globalized mindset?
Thanks, Yvonne. I think good kick-off question. And, if I just look at Singapore, so if I look at my own journey, I've been away for 22 years. So longest time away, shortest time back. So I just started my role in June. But coming back to Singapore, what I've noticed clearly is, how the environment has changed and how vibrant Singapore is as a financial center. So there are clearly a lot of opportunities here. But what it means too is with these opportunities in the financial sector, we are finding that a lot of our clients are using and coming to Singapore, leveraging on the financial system, but also wanting to use Singapore as a base, right, to expand outside of Singapore. So it's not just about doing business in Singapore per se. So given such a requirement, right, for many of our clients here, they're looking for bankers, people in the financial services industry that have the ability to serve them, not just from a Singaporean context, but more from an international perspective. I think coupled with this too is with COVID, we've clearly seen acceleration in digitization, acceleration in topics like sustainability, where this keeps changing and evolving at pace. So given the huge change that's coming into place, it's really important for us as Singaporeans working here really to have a much quicker ability to adapt and really to understand new ideas that we can bring abroad and to advise our clients as they use Singapore again, right, as a hub, right, to go either regional or go global.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to pick up that point about using Singapore as a hub and come to Edmund now. We've talked about why it's so important for Singaporeans to have a globalized mindset, and that's especially key in Singapore's context. Can you describe the role of the Singapore office in serving global functions as well as supporting clients in the region, Edmund?
Yeah, I happen to think that in this part of the world, Singapore in some way has worked itself to be the capital city for Asia Pacific, especially for the financial markets. So for UBS, when my senior staff and myself decided to relook at Singapore, we decided to really invest in a huge office, including the first global cybersecurity setup in Singapore. Singapore matters simply because it's got a good, strong governance, stable, strong and stable Sing dollars, rule of law, a very multicultural society that is very open, especially in the financial sector, to foreign talent. So for UBS, for example, 60% of our staff are local Singaporeans, another 40% from all around the world, 45 nationalities, 55 language capability, because we are dealing with monies globally. Global family offices are in Singapore, investment flow through Singapore. You need a fair bit of affinity to work with people culturally with the same background, and you don't have much time. You have that time, especially last year to now, over the video conference call, to really understand each other quickly, and you need that affinity. We have about 100 of our colleagues that we send overseas, and we'll continue to rotate them. I think it's absolutely vital for Singapore to play that role in Asia, given the very strong political disconnect between the US and China as well. We have a role to play in the financial markets. The financial market doesn't sleep. When we are 6 a.m., Australian market is open. At 3 p.m. each day, Europe opens, I look at Europe. At 9 p.m. before I sleep, I look at the Americas. At 3 a.m. I wake up to find out what's going on so that I'm ready at 5 a.m. That's my life. I chose this life and I'm proud of it. And so we have every element to be successful in Singapore. I know because I managed 13 locations across Asia Pacific for many years already. And I think it is up to us to develop and continue to develop a strong platform so that the younger millennials can carry on with better technology, much better than what we have, much better than what I've started with a typewriter, and then mainframes and then super minis. They are going up to the cloud now, and who knows what will happen, right, 5 years from now. So in a nutshell, we are here to grow.
We are here to grow indeed, from typewriters to the cloud and beyond.
Yeah.
And of course, Singapore is that place that critical function in financial connectivity in the region. Shireen, I want to invite you to also quickly comment on what Kiju and Edmund have shared about hiring locals with a global mindset and why that's key to Singapore's context. And I also want to ask you to share what sort of skills and capabilities you think Singaporeans need to operate in this globalized environment.
Sure. So let's tackle the first question first in terms of Singapore's role. So I'm from the asset management line of business, and it's critical for us to have this global mindset. In Singapore, if we look at just most industry studies, the cross-border fund industry, mutual fund industry in Singapore is about double that of the local domiciled fund industry, and it's growing very rapidly for multiple reasons, the benefits of scale, and also to benefit from the innovation that could happen elsewhere. For example, ESG and sustainable solutions took hold in Europe before it hit here. So there are just so many opportunities in terms of the cross-border opportunities for many of our local clients. And as such, it is crucial for our client advisors and for our staff in Singapore to interface with their counterparts in London, in Luxembourg, where many of these offshore funds are domiciled. And so it's important to interface with them in terms of product development, in terms of AML, KYC, as well as in terms of product strategy and developing, the solutions that will readily suit clients in Singapore. It's just so critical to do that in order for our folks in Singapore to be able to meet the needs of local clients. Things such as, Singapore hedge share classes. We need to make sure that we're heard and we can deliver these solutions to clients. So these are just some of the reasons why we just think it's so important, just for us to have this globalized workforce. Your second question was about skills, correct? And what is needed. So I think in Singapore, as a Singaporean, we are already so privileged to have English as our first language. Now, I think we shouldn't take that for granted. We write well, we speak well. It's already given us this head start. In addition to that, most of us generally speak a second language pretty well, some better than others. But nonetheless, I think that also puts us in good stead. However, communication is more than just language. Mm-hmm. It's about empathy. It's about understanding how to get the best out of people, understanding the needs of folks. And as I mentioned, as we need to interface with different offices, with colleagues in different offices, we'll really need to communicate and collaborate effectively. So I think that's just a key thing. And as the minister spoke, going overseas, being able to interact with people, understanding how to work with others and get the best out of people, I think these are skill sets that are so important in a globalized workforce. The second skill, which I think is really important for Singaporeans, is leadership. It's something that we tend not to train in school, and we're so good at the IQ, but these are all the EQ and the softer skills. It's about how we inspire people, motivate people, usually at a global scale. And when I was in London, I managed a global team. Managing Americans and managing people from Hong Kong and Singapore is different, right? And I think being able to inspire, motivate, and understand what drives people on a multi-dimensional basis is just so crucial. So I think these are some of the traits that I think Singaporeans need in a globalized kind of environment.
So two key skills or capabilities, empathy as well as leadership. Thank you, Shireen. Sing Chong, I want to bring you into the conversation as well. You've just heard from Kiju, Edmund, and Shireen. Can you share with us MAS's perspective on the growth in the financial industry and why it's so important that we groom Singaporeans to not only think global, but be global?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks, Yvonne. So the starting point is, what is Singapore's financial center? What is it like? What does it stand for? And what are we doing, right? So I'm going to go up to 30,000 feet, right? And our vision for Singapore's financial center is for it to be a key global financial center in Asia, connecting global markets, supporting Asia's development, serving Singapore's economy, right? And that gives you an idea as to what needs to happen in order for our vision as a financial center to be realized. Global, regional, serving Singapore's economy. Connecting global markets, Edmund gave you the perspective. Global markets, round the clock, 24 hours, things move, and you have to have a very deep appreciation of what drives, economic developments, financial developments globally, in order to stay on top of markets, connecting global markets. Supporting Asia's development is a key purpose for us because you're not a financial center just to be the third largest FX center, right? That's a ego statement, right? But as a financial center, you need to have a purpose, and supporting Asia's development is a very, very important one for us, right? It is not just about Singapore. Using infrastructure development, right, as an example, right? Key banks in Singapore extend infrastructure loans throughout the region, supporting infrastructure development around the region, lifting the region's growth potential, right? Infra is one example. Another example is trade. But it does mean that, when the business gets done here, right, the people doing those activities must understand the region very, very well, right? You could be managing capital, you could be managing funds sourced from different parts, could be high net worth clients, could be global institutional investors and all that. And when they look for investment opportunities, you have to show that you understand the region very well, right? Since I've been with MAS, it has always been drummed into us, right, that nobody should know better about Asia than Singapore, right? That's the only reason why people will come to us. Now, serving Singapore's economy is not domestic. Because if you think about, SMEs, for example, and where SMEs are going to grow, where their future growth will come from, right? It's not just Singapore. SMEs are going regional. SMEs are going international, right? And even if you're serving Singapore's economy, it is not domestic, right? You have to offer, right, solutions that will help them go regional or grow international. And hence, everything, about what Singapore's financial center does over time, right, requires having that international mindset and outlook. The other perspective is, when you look particularly at the funds industry, right, in the fund asset management industry, we always talk about Singapore as a gateway. Mm-hmm. Every year we publish our asset management survey, and year after year, we source funds from all over the world, right? Asia will increasingly become, right, center of gravity in terms of global economic growth, and funds all over the world are looking at diversification. They're looking for investment opportunities in Asia. And as a gateway, so we are bringing global into Asia. We are also bringing Asia to the world, right? And that intersection, that being able to operate at that intersection, being able to operate at that nexus is critical for us. That really requires us to excel, right? The last point is, over time, when we look at the profile of jobs, right, in Singapore, more and more of those jobs, I would say almost all of the new jobs will be regional facing or international facing, right? And our deep conviction is that for Singaporeans looking to take up those jobs, right, quite apart from technical skills and being strong in those technical skills, it really requires that outward-looking orientation, the international mindset to be able to excel.
You've raised some really good points right there, and I think it's definitely worth leveraging on that sweet spot, a location that Singapore has. I want to circle back now to Kiju and also to my panelists now to talk about what your organizations are doing to support locals in your company to attain that overseas experience. Kiju, what's HSBC doing on that?
Well, HSBC is a global organization. I mean, we're definitely been encouraging a lot of our local talent, right, to go overseas. As Mr. Tan had indicated, we have about 260 over Singaporeans in different locations across the world now. So about 20% holding senior, positions. But I think the mindset and to what all of us, all the speakers have been indicating is to bring relevance, right? And relevance, back to Singapore, right? The skill sets that will make them relevant to this economy and relevant to the banking system, and more importantly, relevant to our customers, right, who bank here with us. So it's really important. So we've been doing this on, yes, when times were available to send them overseas, right, physically, and those were the ones that were willing to go. We have also set up a virtual, right, HSBC University. So it's a global portal where, team members can go in and they can pick courses, right, that will make them, understand the different, skill sets that you might be able to learn. So there are the hard skills, but there are also soft skills like leadership skills, people skills. You can talk about data, you can talk about AI, you can talk about sustainability. So I think these are the avenues where we have given equal opportunity to all HSBC staff, right, to undertake. We're also in the process of building HSBC universities in some locations overseas. So when they can start traveling, they can actually meet people, right? And we can use this as a center where people come from all across the world. And that's where you then get that interaction, you get that ability, right, to discuss with people. We have also started a portal where we have called it a mentoring portal. And it's a global portal where you got mentors and mentees that can go into the portal, where people who are willing to mentor put their profiles there from across the world. You got mentees that go there and kind of select the mentors. So you might call it speed dating, right, in a sense, right, on a virtual basis. But it gives people then that ability to interact on a cross-border basis, but not necessarily having to travel at the same time. So there are a lot of avenues for us to give, our employees different ways, to learn their skill sets, right, to interact. At the end of the day, again, I mean, in my mind, it's really about me making them relevant and relevant to the Singapore economy. And at some point in time, I'm hoping that, we can build an alumni of the 260 plus Singaporeans who are overseas, let them understand what's happening in Singapore and then bring them back home again, such that they can contribute, right, to the banking system and be better bankers, right, for Singapore and for our economy.
I'm actually a proud ex-alumni
Yes,
of HSBC. You had the Management Associate program. I think that's still in place. And I think that was really fantastic because back then we got to go overseas to the UK for like 7 weeks. And as Shaveen said, learning to work with people from very diverse cultures and from all over the world, Latin America, India, and Asia, and learning to deliver a project with the best results with just a diverse workforce, that was really challenging and also very eye-opening. And some of these experiences I still hold very dear to my heart today. Yeah. So wonderful to know that HSBC is doing so much. I always have a soft spot for this. Yeah.
Thank you.
Edmund, tell us more about UBS's internal and international mobility routes that Singaporeans can apply for, and what else is being done to nurture the future pipeline of financial leaders?
Well, we have 100 from Singapore. Overseas right now, 10% in the US, 30% Europe, 60% across the region. So with the 4,000 colleagues of mine in Singapore, we have about 2.5% younger Singaporeans traveling overseas. I would encourage more to take up the offer to go. Today you have video phones, this and that. When I spent 4 years in Taiwan without my wife, just teaching people how to manage your partner, you call her every night before you sleep on a video call with the same background so she know you're at home. But after that, if you want to go out to the pub for a drink to drown your sorrow, that's up to you. But it's much easier than my time growing up where you have to send aerogram and you don't know each other, right? So my bank's motto is very clear. Our purpose is to connect people for a better world. And to connect people, you need to be a power broker. My colleagues and I would know some of the richest, or if not all the richest people in Asia. We connect them. We put somebody who has a warehouse, who wants to run alternative energy with somebody else in Thailand to provide the alternative power so that the valuation can be 5 times of a normal cold storage.
Wow.
And we can only do that if we know people, we have affinity, we know public service works, how to make things work. And so the younger they are, the more I like them to carry that, to go overseas. A lot of our business in banking is not mathematics. A lot of our business is affinity as well as instinctive. You just got to smell it, the deal. You just got to know who to call And the younger you are, the better you are to start right now. Especially for the colleagues I have in all 13 locations. A lot of them travel very well. Let me pick an example. Yo Chu Guan, our head of Southeast Asia global markets, and also our head of the fintech entrepreneurs. She joined us in 2001. She has worked in Taiwan. She has worked in Hong Kong for 3 years. In a very funny way, we say, can you speak Cantonese? She say, can. Okay, Hong Kong has a role, go there for Hong Kong. I can speak about also on the reverse side, my head of Singapore, August Hatake, stupidly I met him one afternoon and said, would you like to come to Singapore? He said, yeah. I say, okay, I chose you because these are the reason. Any question for me? No. He didn't get a pay increase, no, nothing. He paid for his own rental and everything. He came there and said, boss, what are you doing about it? I say, well, you perform, I pay you. He's very happy now. He has been here 6 years. So it is not about Singaporeans going out. It's also about getting expatriates in to infuse the bench in Singapore, and so that you get an international experience so much faster. I've got Polish working here, right? We've got Polish, we've got Dutch. Half the time the Dutch speak, I don't know what they're saying because the Flemish is so difficult to understand. I've got French, right? We've got Swiss, we've got Brazilian, we've got so many. And I'm very proud of each and every one of my colleagues here because they bring to Singapore a certain mix and a certain culture that would assimilate all Singaporeans so that they learn very differently. But I would say to all young Singaporeans, if you want your career to take off in any industry, overcome that hurdle, get to an overseas posting when it's offered to you. It is truly adventurous. The only regret in my career is I did not take that posting when it came to me. Time and again, I turned it down because I happened to start a family at a very young age. So did I regret it? Yeah, in many ways I did, because I think I would have been a better citizen of the world. Forget about just my job. It's just being to contribute to humanity. I could have done so much more.
So not just about Singaporeans going out, but other nationalities coming in. So that reciprocal path. And it's great to know that there is a mini United Nations right here in the UBS office in Singapore. And I've seen a lot of nods, affirmative nods in the audience. Thank you for that. Shireen, what else is JPM doing to support Singaporeans to get that overseas experience, even if they can't be physically overseas?
Yeah, absolutely. So in addition to what some of my fellow speakers have already outlined, I think just a couple more things to highlight. One is really this focus on mobility, right? So every month we have a CEO newsletter listing all the available positions, and everyone's encouraged to do this. So mobility and internal mobility is really top of mind for us. So I'm an example of that. I spent 15 years abroad with JP Morgan, and then I returned to Singapore for this role. We just put in a hire for the CEO of Australia, and I'm so proud that candidate who took on this position came from the Singapore office as well. So these are just examples of kind of the mobility emphasis that we have, and I think this is really key in terms of just fostering that. The other thing that we do, which is also great, when I was in London, I was very involved also in campus recruitment, and this was very much, JP Morgan consciously trying to get Singaporeans and locate good talent Singaporeans to come back to Singapore as well. So I think these are just some of the opportunities. In addition, I know the minister mentioned the associate training program that we hold in JP Morgan Asset Management. And we basically have training programs at every level, right? From the associate level to the ED, MD level. They have different names and so on. But it's just so exciting to see Singaporeans. I mean, we're always punching above our weight. There are always Singaporeans in these programs. And it really helps because, like you said, Yvonne, going into this global, I mean, now, let's see, pre-pandemic, but let's see how it works. A lot of this has been squashed, and we're resuming this in a couple of years. But when you get like 50 of your best candidates at associate to VP to ED to MD level together in a room, all interacting with their global peers, they really learn a lot of intangible things.
Yeah.
And they learn how to communicate, empathy, all these things, which I think then put them in good stead for regional, global type of jobs going forward.
Absolutely. Thank you for that sharing, Shireen. Sing Chong, Singapore's role and position now has seen lots of technology firms, right, and global firms try to anchor their regional and global functions here, which is great for Singapore because it brings in a lot of growth and job opportunities and also opens up the possibility of allowing our locals to tap on the international footprint of these global FIs. Minister earlier mentioned that MAS will be providing more support, even more support now to the FIs. Can you expand a little bit more on the iPost and the FAMS scheme?
Sure, yeah. Again, the starting point is actually the financial institutions themselves, as organizations are acutely aware of the importance, of these overseas postings. So, at the individual organization level, Kiju explained, Edmund and Shireen as well, they have been doing a lot. And, our starting point is a good one. And I do believe that many Singaporeans have had the opportunity and they have benefited. But we think we can do more. Right? And it is important for us to come in, lean in, and actually, get even more numbers out there. Just to give a bit of background, I think Minister mentioned that the iPost scheme has been around for a long time. And he gave a number, right, in terms of the take-up of that scheme. And then, there was an observation that, notwithstanding, right, there were some observations, right, that Singaporeans, individuals, right, sometimes may hesitate in terms of going overseas because they have other, life priorities. So reflecting on that, and actually, the team worked hard in going out, and getting feedback from financial institutions. We decided, we needed to lean in on 3 very specific areas, right? One of the biggest takeaway was that we have to catch Singaporeans young, because that's when they have most flexibility and most interest to go overseas.
Yes.
And get that exposure, right?
Yes.
Because if you wait until people reach middle management position, there's some sense that they could be groomed for managerial and leadership position. That ironically is the hardest time to get them to go overseas, because they would have settled with family and kids and run into the issues that Edmund faced in Taiwan, right?
John, it wasn't an issue, it was a pleasure.
So and hence, for the FAM scheme, which is a management associate scheme,
Yes.
give them that overseas exposure, right? We've sort of started, in a kind of limited way, but we think there's a lot of scope to expand that. And, again, this is based on feedback from financial institutions, and we are hopeful that we will see stronger take-up.
Okay.
The second is, going to the iPost scheme, right? As I mentioned, originally targeted for, people who are deemed to have leadership or managerial potential. But similarly, what's driving us is catch them when they're young, right? So, even if they may not be deemed to have leadership positions, but, just to give people exposure, right? And the leadership potential may show up while they're overseas. As Minister said, you need to expose them, and that may be the trigger, right? As well as specialist talent. You mentioned big techs, international footprint,
Yes.
specialist talent. That's vital, because the people they hire, they interact with global technology centers of excellence. It is not a localized capability. So we want to cater for that as well. And hence, expanding the eligibility, right, for financial institutions to send more, right, of the younger staff, whether in whatever functions, including specialist positions, to be exposed for international exposure. And then the third one is the focus on Asia, right? So, generally speaking, if you want to send people anywhere in the world, including head office, there's a certain level of funding. Asia, we are making it doubly attractive, right? Going as far as to, fund salary costs. And, as I mentioned earlier, Asia is where our people need to be excellent at, right? That's where the bread and butter is, and you really need to know Asia well to be able to excel at your role. So that sort of gives the background behind why we have made the enhancements that we did. Just to say that there's a lot of interest in the monies that MES is giving out. For us, it's not about the money, and I'm sure for the FIs, it's not about the money either, right? But it is actually the signaling, right? The signaling and the support that MES wants to give, right, in order to provide that incentive and encouragement for people to really seriously consider taking up that regional role and posting.
So that signaling and also that focus on Asia and providing more support to the younger talent to get them out there.
That's right.
And I want to come now to a more personal level. I know Edmund has shared already about how to make it work even for these overseas postings. Ladies and gentlemen, I am speaking to high-flying Singaporean leaders in the financial industry who have spent much of their career overseas. We have Shireen and Kiju, 15 to 22 years abroad. Edmund and Sing Chong have spent a few years abroad, but pretty much taken on globalized roles throughout their career in the banking industry. So let's find out now, what made you decide? What was that push that made you decide to even take on this role, and whether there was anything you would have done differently? I want to come to you first, Shireen, because you spent time in London, Milan, New York, and before that again, London. How do you think your overseas experience shaped your resilience and adaptability to navigate different environments as a leader?
I mean, definitely, it's shaped the adaptability, because the ability to communicate with almost everyone is something quite important. And I don't know about you guys, when you guys log in, you have to log into your specific domains. I'm one of those who have had the pleasure of logging into 3 different domains: APAC, US, and EMEA, right? So I think just having worked in these 3 different locations overall, it's just helped me be a better person. And I think it's helped me to communicate better, to understand challenges better, and also to form this amazing network, right? Because you don't know who's going to rise and be the next leader and how you'll need people and so on. So it does facilitate and grease the wheels in terms of us just doing business. So I actually think that's been really key. I also think just speaking the languages. So I lived in Milan, like you said, which was very kind of out on left field. It wasn't a natural progression, but I did spend 3 years there. And that was when I was a road warrior. That was before I became a region, like a head. But understanding the clients and seeing the capital flow into Asia at that time was actually quite important, because it gave you a better understanding of how connected our industry is and how best to capitalize on it. So I do think all these factors really shape me in terms of just being able to lead.
Was it difficult being away for so long?
I don't think so. We were just talking in the room. It's difficult coming back, I think. When you've been away for so long, it's actually a little bit of a shock coming back. Mm-hmm. But I think there's always some adjustment in the beginning. I think when I went there, when I first landed in London, it was strange, right? People eat at their desks and they eat pret-a-manger and they're okay with that every day.
Cold, limp
and you're like, it's cold. Like how do you do this every day, right? And it's natural to try to find that Singaporean to go eat laksa with and all that, but you have to resist that chance of doing that and hanging out only with Singaporeans. And it's only when you immerse yourself that you understand and you pick up, and by osmosis and so on, just all the skills and all the diversity out there. And D&I, diversity, is just such a huge topic now in JP Morgan, but in every financial institution. And being able to understand that, and it is just so crucial, I think, in terms of a skill set.
Yeah, we were having that little chat in the back before our panel discussion today. And Kiju, you've worked in Thailand, Hong Kong, London, China, and he said his Chinese is way better than mine, of course. What was the best thing about taking on this international career path?
I think the best thing about taking on this international career path was going through different experiences in different countries, understanding a lot of history, culture, and how that actually shapes the business environment. So I spent a lot of time in China. Right? I spent a lot of time with the regulators in China, navigating. I was there when China started its liberalization of the capital markets. understanding the history of China and the concerns of the regulators really gives you then insight to why business is done a certain way and why decisions are made in a certain way. Right? So I think that was very enlightening for me, and it's given me a lot of knowledge, a lot of ability, really, even when I come back to Singapore today, to explain to Singaporean customers what is going on in China, why are all these things happening. So whilst it's not publicized in the news because I spend so much time there and have so much dialogue, right, it gives you that sort of insight. So I think that's invaluable experience which you never get anywhere else. I think the other piece really around the experience is that I went through multiple crises in other countries. So when I went to Hong Kong, it was SARS. When I went to Thailand, it was the red shirt. Right? When I went to Hong Kong, it was a yellow shirt. I was just like, multiple colors, right, that you experience, but it's just given you that sense and the ability to understand resiliency. And you really know what it's a BCP, right, when you go through this. And you really understand and empathize with the people. You understand what they're trying to achieve. You understand how to look after your team members. It makes you a better leader, right? It gives you the ability to connect on a much closer level. So these are the skill sets that you gather as you move along, and these are the skill sets I bring back with me, and I hope to impart also to the team members that are working in HSBC in this organization. We serve a multitude, right, of international clients, and it's really important for us, as other speakers are saying, to have that ability, right, to communicate to them and provide them the knowledge of what's going on outside, be that super connector, right, and such that you can continue to be relevant, right, to our clients and relevant to the banking system.
Still staying on you, Kee Joo, I wonder if you could quickly share what it was like bringing the family with you as well, because I understand too, some of the feedback that was received by MAS about the reluctance to go overseas was that, you have got your family, you got to bring your kids and your wives. How are you going to settle everybody else besides your day job? What was it like for you?
It was challenging, I would say, but I went when I was young, right, or younger at that point of time. So when I was sent overseas at that point in time, I didn't have kids then, right? So just got married, got sent overseas. But along the way, the kids came, right? So it did become a lot more challenging. I have two daughters, right? So one's 17 and one's 20 now, so they're off to university. But it was challenging, but I think it's a choice we made, right? It's a choice that you make to say, let's give the kids, a different sort of education, a different experience. I grew up in Singapore, right? I did my NSC, I did all my studies. I never studied overseas. I never had a chance to do that. So, it was just that decision to say that let's give them a chance. And we were I'm just inherently curious, right? So I think I took that as an adventure, right? So it's about adventure, taking your kids on the adventure and letting them experience a different culture, but making sure that as a parent, you continue to make them grounded, to make them understand who they are, right? So whilst they've never lived in Singapore, they are very much Singaporean, right? They will come back, the connection to family, to where they came from. It's really, I believe, the responsibility of parents, right, to undertake. So, whilst you do have concerns about your kids, I will tell you, your kids are a lot more resilient than you think they are, right? They will survive, right? They will learn. They will be, they have a different mindset because they went to international schools, but at heart, they're still Singaporean. Right, so I would encourage, for people or the younger Singaporeans who are thinking about, taking on that jump, right? Do it. I mean, it's been a great adventure. It's 22 years, right? But I never expected it. It was supposed to be 2 years. Someone added a 20 in front, right? So then it became 22 years. But I'm back home, right? I think that's what's important. And be able to contribute, right, back to the growth of the financial services industry in Singapore and to HSBC.
That's so nice. Thanks for that sharing. Edmund, you've spent years in Taiwan as well, and in your role as president of Asia Pac, you oversee 13 locations. So very global lens that you take on. How do you think you have personally benefited from this globalized role?
Yeah, I think a few perspectives. If you can't or you don't have the opportunity to be to attach in another location, a regional job would actually be just as good, because it allowed you to travel quite a fair bit. And since you talk about Pret a Manger, I must tell you this is quite funny. I went to a Pret a Manger store, and the tag clearly is a Chinese trying to learn the language to serve. So I say, what sandwich do you have? And she say, egg mayo. Mayo in Chinese means no more. So I say, okay, egg mayo, 没关系. That means never mind. What other sandwich do you have? Actually, what she meant was the only sandwich left was egg mayo. but it came across as egg mayo. I thought it was really funny. That's some of the things you travel, you learn. No, so take on a regional role. For me, it personally benefited me. I went to Taiwan for a very simple reason. There's a private equity buyout. I was part of the deal in buying out. I could participate as a president of the firm as well as a part owner, including an equity rider. I make very good money. I'm not shy to say that. And that's what motivated me to be a bit of an entrepreneur, to own a bank in a small part of it, 6%, and then to run it. I make no apologies for that as a Singaporean. But as a Singaporean, to thrive in Taiwan is extremely difficult.
How so?
Singaporeans are known to be logical from a deductive standpoint, not empirical, engineered, very trustworthy, deliver all projects on time. But let it be known, in the past at least, we are not very creative. So when you get a maverick, they don't expect you to be Singaporean. If I survey myself, most of the time they don't know where I'm from. But I'm proud to serve Singapore and to carry the Singapore badge overseas. And I think the younger Singaporeans can, take on and do a better job than what my generation has done. They are better traveled, better equipped to do a much better job. And in UBS, I think we hire some of the best talent. Last year we hired 300 to groom them, even though we don't have a position for them, just to tie them over a very difficult period. We have 100 just graduated, I was told yesterday. 60 stayed with us. The other 40, I think 20 over found employment with other banks. So I'm very pleased about our achievements. But really, go far, enjoy the journey, learn as much as you can, be hungry, be humble. It doesn't always mean that you have to be located there. It just means you've got to take on a regional role and enjoy yourself.
Yeah, that's another great opportunity, even if you can't go overseas.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Edmund. Sing Chong, you've been driving MAS's international development and portfolio since 2004. You've also spent time in the London office. How do you think that overseas stint shaped the way you approach your work?
I'll just focus on those two aspects because each one has its a very unique takeaway. In my role as chief rep in London, basically that role entailed engaging all the key global FIs based in London, in the city, in Canary Wharf, and basically speaking to global business heads and convincing them why it's good and interesting for them to think about expanding in Singapore, right? But every single engagement required a lot of preparation, right? There was a need to really understand what their business priorities were, right? And potentially how Singapore factors into, right, and gels with their business priorities. And in those meetings, when they ask you questions, they don't just ask you, oh, so what's happening in Singapore? They actually ask you what's happening in Asia, right? And that was a very, very big learning point, right? That when you go in, you start to engage different stakeholders, right? The degree of preparedness, right, is actually very broad in scope, and you need to be quite detailed as well. Now, not all engagements turned out positively, right? I think on balance we did score hits, but others may not. But there was one very, very important thing, right, which is to leave a strong and positive impression, right? And the impression that we left behind was, in Singapore, we have a central bank who is willing to put in effort to understand your business, to listen to you, and to even partner you in the growth and expansion plans, leaving that impression, right, with global decision makers. That was very, very important. Then global financial crisis, right? I think when you think about international finance, the landscape really, really changed, right? For one, G7 morphed. Well, it didn't morph, but you suddenly had the G20 coming onto the scene. So when you think about international finance, more players were brought in. Singapore is not officially a member, but we got invited to those meetings. At financial regulatory standard setting bodies, we also got invited to the table. So, there was an opportunity for MAS in Singapore to actually, become active at international forums. Just to share one example, right, which really shaped my own experience, which is getting involved in overnight communique drafting sessions, right? It sounds dreary.
Yes.
It sounds awful, but that was the occasion where you get to sit down at the table, whether it's G20 or whether it's at the IMF, 24 constituencies, understand the key issues that people were very concerned about, understand country by country, big country, small country, rich country, poor country, what was their take on those issues. Listen to how countries make their interventions on the issues. Listen to how countries defend their interests on the issues. But more interestingly, think about how Singapore can add constructive views, right, to those issues, as well as come up with bridging solutions that help countries around the table bridge their positions. That was really fascinating for me, right? But it suggests that, basically, when you go into an international role, you do need to have quite a sophisticated set of skills, right? Number one, mastery of the issue. Number two, you need to be a skilled communicator. Number three, you need to be able to troubleshoot, right? And be creative in, thinking about, how you want to add value and how you want to propose bridging solutions that can help the community reach agreement and make progress on key issues.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think each of my panelists today have really shared their why as to why Singaporeans shouldn't miss those opportunities to go overseas or take on that regional role. So before we wrap, I want to invite each of you to give me that mic drop moment, okay, that one-liner to encourage Singaporeans today listening in on why they should just not miss 100% of the shots that they don't take. So Sing Chong, let's go around the table and end with Kiju.
Yeah. Think of it as building muscles, right? International postings are very tough. It's not easy. It's competitive. You have to fight for it. You can't wait to be offered the position. You must really go for it, right? Secondly, take yourself out of the comfort zone. It is a stretch. It is a constant learning journey. Learn what's out there, right? And be in a position to figure out, how you can add value, and excel at what you do, right? But in building muscles, right? I would say that it will help, right, the individual really perform well in terms of the financial roles that will be available in Singapore's financial sector. It will help the financial sector succeed.
Building muscle is a really nice analogy because no one gets muscles overnight just by working out, right? So it's not going to be easy, but it's time to build that muscle. Thank you, Sing Chong. Shireen.
As we're working 30 plus years or more, our career is not going to be an endless series of promotions and pay increases and so on. So what's going to be really important is acquiring skills. And therefore, we should never turn down any opportunity to acquire skills, whether it's geographical or mobility or just being in Singapore or being exposed to any other form of skills. But I think that's going to be how we start looking at our careers rather than just a linear progression going forward.
So maybe take on that non-linear path to acquire new skills. Thanks, Shireen. Edmund.
Going overseas is fun, young man, young woman. Go. Trust me, it's really fun. Go enjoy yourself, explore the world. Singapore must grow our own timbers. And our trees can only be stronger if there's cross-pollination. We have to grow our own timbers. So my encouragement to you is go cross-pollinate, Go have fun. Trust me. If I was younger, I'll go with you. You'll come back a better person, and you can contribute so much more to our economy and also to your own wisdom that you can impart to others. So go have fun.
Go have fun. I really like that one. Kiju.
how can I beat his last statement? Go have fun. So I do agree with Edmund and the rest speakers. So I think my thought process would be, continue to be curious, continue to be hungry, right? Your career it's a marathon. It's not a 100-meter sprint, right? So there is still a long way to go, and it's a journey. And I think, as to what Edmund said, you need to have fun, right? It's really, really important, right? Enjoy the ride. There's so much to learn. The world is so interconnected nowadays. We can't remain and play as a small nation state without, developing, our own timber, right, as Edmund said, our own capabilities. So all the best to all of you who are, willing to go on that adventure. If you need any advice, be happy to speak to you. Right, thank you.
Thank you so much. We have quite a fun bunch of CEOs here. It's about building muscle, acquiring new skills, having fun, as well as being hungry and being humble. Thank you so much, Sing Chong, Shireen, Edmund, and Kiju. We've had such a robust discussion today, and we've talked about why FIs must systematically groom Singaporeans and to provide opportunities for them to go overseas. But more importantly, Singaporeans must also be willing to embrace these opportunities abroad and to chart their own career journey, not just to meet their individual aspirations, but I think to recognize that Singapore as an international financial center is well connected both regionally and globally. And therefore, it's really important that our own timber, our Singaporean workforce, has the requisite exposure and acquires the international capabilities and mindset to be agile enough to thrive in our global financial center and also pick up some of the best practices from the diversified workforce that we have right here. We have listed a whole bunch of characteristics that a globalized workforce must have, but I think two that really stand out for me today would be empathy and good communication skills, because to echo what Dr. Tan said, if you do miss 100% of the shots, you don't take. And so that overseas experience and the international exposure, these are the intangibles that can't be taught in a classroom, as exemplified by our speakers today. So thank you so much, everyone. Big thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in to our webinar today. If you'd like to catch a replay of the conversation, you can always go to the IBF SG Facebook page. You can also scan the QR code that's on your screen right now to find out what other Growing Timber webinars and events we have lined up for you. And you can also browse the content from our previous sessions. Once again, my name is Yvonne Chan. Thank you for spending your afternoon with us, and we look forward to seeing you at the next Growing Timber event. Goodbye.